This is Carrie Johnson with the Iowa Department of Management, and this is a brief webinar to familiarize those individuals that will be completing the county hospital budgets on the Department of Management's online system for fiscal year 26. What I'm going to do is provide some general information about the budget itself, some of the statutory references regarding what can be levied for in property tax, etc., and then also how to complete the forms using the online software. First of all, in order to access information regarding property tax rate information and the budget forms themselves, you will want to bookmark the Department of Management's website. And in particular, for the hospital budgets, you'll see the website as listed here. It's dom.iowa.gov/local-government /other-authority-resources. And if you scroll down the page a little bit, if you're curious about other hospital property tax rates and levies, things of that nature, you can open up a property tax rate data file that will provide you with information regarding the various county hospitals in the state, their different levy rates, total rates, etc. And this does provide you with data back for a number of years. So if you're looking for trends or just some history or what other hospitals might be levying for in tax, this is a good place to go. So the Department of Management's role with the process is to provide the forms, so these web-based forms. We provide instructions, which is an option you can select once you're inside the budget forms. There is an instructions button that you'll see. We also provide technical assistance for all the local government budgets. So if you're working within the budget forms and you have some questions, feel free to contact me and I will help you with those issues. It's important to take note of the budget timeline as far as what needs to happen and when, and these are all statutory timelines that need to be followed in order to submit a valid budget. County hospitals need to publish notice of a public hearing, and that notice includes their proposed budget summary. So you publish it in the paper not less than 10, no more than 20 days prior to the date of that public hearing. You would hold that hearing where you would convene a meeting of your board and provide an opportunity for anyone within the community to come and make comments for or against the budget. Upon conclusion of that hearing, the board would make a move to adopt the final budget. You need to certify that budget with the county auditor by April 30th. Department of Management then compiles all the local government budgets, so not only county hospital budgets, but also city budgets, county budgets, school budgets, and a variety of other entities that levy property tax. So we compile all of those budgets together and certify final tax rates back to the county auditor by June 15th. We also provide that county auditor with a tax district specific consolidated rate for all the tax districts within their county. So this would allow them to see for each and every tax district, and by tax district, I mean an area that shares the same city, school, county, etc. That area is provided with one total rate once added up, all those individual city, school, county rates together. So the county auditor then, once they know the final rates, compile and prepare those tax rates for the county treasurer each year by July 1. And then the county treasurer then prepares the tax statements that property owners receive. And property taxes are due to the county treasurer each year by September 30th and March 30th, so in 2 installments. For county hospitals, there are a variety of different types of property tax levies that can be used depending on the type of hospital you are. For public hospital, they have a general fund levy rate if they're under 225,000 of 27 cents per $1,000 of value. If they're over 225,000, which this would be strictly broad lawns, the rate limitation is $2.05 per thousand. And so when we talk property tax rates, we're basically referring to a dollar rate that would be charged per $1,000 of taxable value on a given property. If a hospital is a revenue type hospital, so authorized under that different section of Iowa code, their general fund rate is $1.08 per thousand. FICA and IPERS levies, this is to pay for the employer share of FICA and IPERS. This can be used if the general basic levy is at its max for those public hospitals, and that is not rate limited, but it is allowed in the amount necessary. Public hospitals also have an emergency levy rate, an ambulance levy rate, a tort liability levy rate, and then also in some cases, hospitals may be able to levy for debt service. This would be primarily at the initial onset of the hospital itself. So I'll go into a little bit more of detail of those different rates. Again, though, if you're curious, you can pull up those sections of the code and read the statutory language yourself. But again, for general levy, this is for the general operations of the hospital. For a public hospital, it's for the improvement, maintenance, and replacement of hospital. And again, for most folks, it's 27 cents per thousand, but for broadlawns, it is $2.05. For a revenue type hospital, this would be for the operation, maintenance, and funded depreciation of that hospital with a levy rate of $1.08 per thousand. And a memorial hospital, currently there is one hospital that's a memorial type hospital. It does not levy property tax directly. So that's the sort of general levy that's used for the operations of the various hospitals for public and revenue hospitals. For public hospitals, there's also an option to levy for FICA and IPERS. Again, it's not rate limited, it is the amount necessary, but it is limited to only the employer's share of that FICA and IPERS cost. You can only use that levy if your general fund levy is at its maximum. And expenditures aren't actually shown in the FICA and IPERS funds. What you do is you bring the tax revenue into the FICA and or IPERS funds and then transfer it to the fund with salary expenditures. So the revenue would then be transferred to the general fund to actually expend. Emergency tax levy, that's for an emergency that can't be financed through the general fund. And by emergency, we're talking about a fiscal emergency, not necessarily sort of a natural disaster or something of that nature. It's really a fiscal emergency. You stating as the county hospital that you do not have enough revenue to fully operate. So, if that's a situation a hospital would find themselves in, they would need to consult Code of Iowa 24-6. It is a levy limit of 27 cents per thousand. The use of this emergency levy does require the approval of the State Appeal Board. State Appeal Board is a 3-member body of the Director of Department of Revenue, or excuse me, Department of Management, the state auditor, and the state treasurer. It's a 3-member body. There's a special form that would need to be completed. Once you would file your budget, you would need to include that emergency levy in the budget and have it approved, obviously, by your board. And then when you file your budget by April 30th, you would file it including that emergency levy. And you would also obviously submit that Form 699. You would file all those documents with the county auditor and provide them with that information. Then the county auditor would need to let me know and the state appeal board, and your continued proposed use of that emergency levy would be determined by the board itself. So you would adopt your budget, including the levy, be able to demonstrate that your public was in support of that levy through the budget process, and then file it, including that levy. But the state appeal board would ultimately have the decision on whether or not that levy would remain within the budget. If you were approved for that additional levy, the funds must be transferred from that emergency fund to be spent, so they would be transferred to the general fund. Unemployment tax levy, this is to pay the cost of unemployment benefits. There is no rate limit, again, for this one either. It is the amount necessary, and it is limited in purpose. Ambulance tax levy, this is only for public hospitals when such services are not otherwise available. So this is a situation where basically the hospital would be the only party to providing ambulance service within the county. And this would be for the purchasing, leasing, equipping, maintaining, and operating the ambulance service. And it is a rate limit of 27 cents per thousand. Tort or other insurance tax levy, this is to pay the cost of tort liability, judgments against the hospital, and basically any insurance that's necessary and prudent to the operation of the hospital. Again, there is no rate limit, but it is limited to the amount necessary and only for those insurance costs. Debt service tax levy, this is for payment of qualified outstanding debt. There is a Form 703 in your budget papers that would need to be completed. There is no rate limit if you're levying for debt service. It is the amount necessary to pay for that year's principal and interest payment on debt. So it is limited for that purpose. I do know there's not been any hospitals levy for debt service in recent memory. I think it's typically for when hospitals are initially set up. When we talk about funds, many hospitals set aside funds from depreciation, et cetera, for building and improvements. Within your budget forms, you do need to account for all funds, and you would have a restricted fund. There's a restricted fund page, a board designated fund page, where you can provide that information to your public regarding any funds set aside for those uses. And money may be transferred from this fund to other funds by board resolution. So that's an overview of the different funds and tax levies available to hospitals, in particular to public hospitals. Just a few notes as we talk about some of the revenue sources that you have as hospitals. Obviously, you have property tax and the various charges and fees. You do have a few different state replacement dollars that do come to the hospital as a property tax user. For quite a while, there was a program called the Business Property Tax Credit. This was replaced. It's no longer a credit, but it is actually a reduction in value that the state will then replace. You will receive revenue from the state to help with that loss of value. It would be budgeted with commercial and industrial replacement that's currently has been part of the process for a number of years. It is being phased out. There is a budgetary revenue line item called non-tax revenues and replacement. And this is where you would budget these replacement dollars from the state. When we talk about the business property tax credit, it's often now called the two-tier replacement program. Um, you Fiscal year 24 was the first year that this program came into play. So if you want to have an idea or get an idea of what to budget for as far as fiscal 26, you can certainly look to what was received in your fiscal 24 payment just to see, to get an idea of what you've received in the past. I did also reference the replacement called commercial and industrial replacement. This program is currently being phased out with the last year of payment being fiscal year 30. We have provided an estimate of the future year's commercial industrial replacements. So if you're wanting to know what your estimate is for receipt for fiscal year 26, as you look at that budget item, you can take a look at our website and that'll give you some more detailed information. Homestead exemption is an exemption that was passed in the 2023 session of the General Assembly by House File 718. Currently, property owners do receive a homestead credit, and that does currently see replacement dollars come in from the state. What House File 718 did is add a homestead exemption for individuals 65 and over. For those folks, beginning with this fiscal year 26 and beyond, those folks receive a property value exemption of $6,500. So their value that will be taxed against is actually reduced by $6,500, and there is no state replacement revenue for that exemption. There is also and has been in place for a number of years a military exemption. That used to be a property value exemption of 1852. With House File 718, that exemption was increased to $4,000 and it is no longer funded by the state. So again, it's a reduction in value, but it's not funded by the state. The budget deadline for folks for county hospitals is April 30th. This was changed also with that House File 718 a couple sessions ago. For a long time, your budget deadline was March 15th, so this does give you a little bit more breathing room to adopt your budget. Budget protests, you can adopt your budget following a public hearing, and your citizens can still undergo a budget protest process. So essentially, they would circulate a petition. The process itself is covered under Code of Iowa 2427. So persons affected by your budget can circulate a petition and file an appeal with the county auditor, indicating their disapproval of some item within your budget. So they'd file that with the county auditor. The number of signatures required depends on how many people voted at the last election for governor. So that's a calculated amount, but it needs to be at least 10. So those folks can submit a protest petition to the county auditor regarding your budget. The deadline for them to do that is May 10th. If that would occur, the county auditor would then forward that protest and all the documentation to that state appeal board that I mentioned earlier. That consists of Director of Department of Management, the Treasurer of State, and Auditor of State. They would conduct a local hearing on your budget. So they would send staff out to hold a local public hearing on your budget. and hear from both the folks protesting your budget and you, to defend your budget. They would gather all that information and then they would render a decision on your budget. This can include reducing expenditures and tax asking. Budget amendments. So basically, if you are within your current budget year and you find that you need to increase your budgeted expenditures for any funds, any of your particular funds, you would need to hold a budget amendment. The amendment itself must be effective before any of the expenditure amounts are exceeded. Budget amendments require the same notice and hearing procedures as required for the adoption of the original budget. So essentially, you need to publish a notice not less than 10, no more than 20 days prior to the date of the hearing that you'll have on your budget amendment. That hearing would then provide an opportunity for citizens to speak to your budget amendment, and you can gather that information. With a budget amendment, the only thing really you are doing is increasing your expenditures. It does not provide an opportunity to increase tax asking within the year. It's an opportunity for you to go back to your citizens and say, yes, we know we had budgeted to expend $1 million, but some unforeseen circumstance now will require us to expend $1.2 million, and we need to ask your permission to do that. Budget amendments are also, like the budget, subject to protest. Keep in mind an amendment of a budget that's after May 31st that is protested by your citizens, but there's not enough time for the state appeal board to hold a hearing and render a decision on that protest by the end of the fiscal year. If that would happen, then your protest is void. Or excuse me, your amendment is void. The budget amendment form itself is online. It's found by logging into the same system. You pull up your current year budget, and you'll see on the left-hand side that there is an amend button. It would generate a new form that is basically a one-page form for you to use to amend your budget by fund. And there are also instructions within that online amendment. I'll take some time now to go over the online budget system itself and review the forms. If you've completed the budget process in the past, you'll find that it's basically the same for fiscal year 26. If you had access to the system in past years, that should transfer from last year. Let me know if someone needs access that doesn't have it. Just send me an email and we'll get them set up. If you use a tab key during data entry, it does move you between cells in which you can enter data. You can use the arrow keys to move side to side and up and down. Remember that ending fund balances are produced by subtracting the sum of all expenditures from the sum of beginning balance and revenues. And as you move within a page, the cell that you're in the row will show a green highlight just to sort of keep you anchored within the budget forms. If you were to go to the Department of Management homepage, dom.iowa.gov, you could select local government on the blue ribbon on the top and click on other authority resources from the drop down. Or, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, this is the direct link to the page for all the other resources for hospitals and miscellaneous budgets. This page does have a variety of information and training for local levy authorities to go into the budget forms and the online application. You'll scroll down a little bit. Under online applications, you'll select the local government valuation finance system and click on that orange square. The first page, you'll see the home page prior to logging into the system. This will display for you the counties that have or have not yet filed their valuations. So you do need to see that your county has filed their valuations in order for you to be able to set a property tax rate. You can certainly go into the system prior to them filing valuations and plug in your other revenues other than property tax. You can plug in all of your expenditures and prior year information, but you do need them to file value in order to actually be able to calculate a property tax rate. So to begin working in your budget forms, you would log in using an Enterprise A&A account ID and password. And again, if you don't have one, let me know and I'll provide you with the information to get set up. Or if you do have one and simply need access, again, you can let me know. If you can't remember your password, that's not something I can assist with. Or if you have any other account related problems, down here in the bottom right of the blue box, you can report issue to State Service Desk and let them know that you are having problems with the actual account itself. Once you log in, you'll see on the home page information related to budgets and reports. And in the middle, sort of the main part of the screen, you will see your budgets displayed. So the new fiscal year 26 budget will be right at the top. You'll also see current year budgets and then prior year budgets also explained and listed. For the fiscal year 26, in order to get into the budget and start to enter data, you'll click on the edit button and that would get you into the budget pages. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you need to amend the current year budget, you would go to the same place, but you'd click that amend button and that would generate an amendment page for you. Once you're inside the budget, you'll see across the top that there are different tabs that represent the different pages of the budget. You may need to use many of these, or you may not be using very many of them. It kind of depends on how many different funds you actually use within your particular county hospital. Data entered on these different tabs then pull over to the adopted budget summary and the public hearing page. And so again, you may be using many of these pages and you may not. Everyone, of course, is going to be using the general fund page. Once you click on one of those tabs for each of the funds, you'll see that each fund has two tabs within it. One is a revenue tab and the other is an expenditure tab. So you'll want to complete both tabs of those budgets. And another thing too to mention with the different funds that you're using, you are required to enter the actual year data, the budget year data, re-estimated. If you had, say, already amended your budget, you'd want to reflect that in the current year data. And then, of course, you would need to complete your budget request within the budget forms. Again, as I mentioned, you do need the county to file their property values in order for you to calculate a property tax rate and asking. Once the valuations, and they're actually the 2024 values, are filed in your county, that's for the fiscal year 26 budget. Once they're filed, then those numbers are populated within your budget forms. You don't have to do any entry. The budget system itself goes out and pulls in the numbers you needed. Until valuations are filed, or if your county auditor, say, finds an error they need to correct, then they will unfile their values. So that way you know that the values are not in a final status and may change. So until they're filed, or if the county auditor unfiles and makes changes, you'll see this yellow ribbon. And if you have any questions, certainly contact your county auditor. The adopted budget summary page, as I mentioned, is mostly populated from the other supplementary pages in your budget because it's where you would enter your other revenues and all of your expenditures. On the adopted budget summary page, though, this is where you need to input your tax request. as you're working in the budget forms, if you see cells that are blue, those are cells that you can enter into. If they are white cells, they're either being populated by another data source, or there's a formula there that's calculating what's being listed in the cell, and you can't enter into those. But on your adopted budget summary, that is where you're going to input your tax request. So you would input for your general fund, for example, how many dollars you need, and the form itself will take a look at your value and calculate the rate. Obviously, if you input more dollars, that would calculate a rate that's over, say, your 27-cent levy limit, that would result in an error in your budget. So just sort of watch what you're entering in there. And if it's over 27 cents, say if you're a public hospital, under that 225,000, then you'd know that that's not going to stand. That'll be and something you would have to correct. When you're in the budget, you can check errors at any time. So as I mentioned, make sure that your rate limits are not being exceeded. You can save, and we do encourage you to do that often. You can also print at any time. When you print, you can print the full budget, so you can print all the pages. You can also print only the current tabs. So if you're a hospital that doesn't use, the majority of those fund pages because you don't use those funds, you can just print the current tab. So just the page that just the pages of the funds that you use. Upon proposing your budget for publication, you'll note that there is an option to only go in and print that publication notice. So you can save that off to your system and send it to your newspaper. If you're in Google Chrome, you can select your local printer as the destination, so you can actually print a hard copy, or you can save to PDF as your destination, so that way you can save it off again to your machine. If you want to include electronic or virtual meeting information on your notice, there is a text box where you can add that information. You can also add it within the location field within your public hearing notice information. Again, you need to check your errors before you finalize your budget. If you check errors and you'll see an error is listed and an indication that you cannot publish your budget, and it will tell you what that error is. In this case, this is a levy rate exceeding the maximum rate. So whatever your dollars that you requested, say for your general fund, if you're a public hospital, it pushed you over that 27-cent statutory levy rate limit, and you would not be able to proceed with your budget. When you're error-free, you'll get this green indication, and then you can propose and publish your budget to obtain that hearing notice you need to send to your paper. So at this point, you can proceed, and you can fill out the information needed for your hearing notice. This is where you enter the time, date, and place of your hearing notice. And again, you need to your notice needs to be published in the newspaper not less than 10, no more than 20 days prior to the date of your actual hearing. So just sort of keep that in mind. The system, as I mentioned, does generate a notice. It's a one-page notice. You can print it off, or you can save it as a PDF to your system and then forward that on to your newspaper. If you don't, want to save off that notice at that time, you can certainly go in at any time and print that publication notice. Following the public hearing, the board can make allowable revisions, and those revisions that are allowed are decreasing your tax asking or decreasing your expenditures from what you publish. You can never go higher than what you published in the newspaper. So they can either approve the budget as it is, or they can make reductions to that budget. If they want to make reductions to the budget, they would return to draft. And basically, this just opens up your budget for edits. So you go in, say you reduce your tax asking, you'd save again, you propose publish again, but you don't actually have to put this in the newspaper again. You leave the original publication date the same and then have them adopt and approve the budget as revised. Or, of course, if they approve it as it is, then you just click that adopt button. And you would enter the adoption date. So the date that your board adopted that budget, you'd enter the date and select adopt. With your county auditor, you do need to file the proof of publication for that budget notice that you will get from your newspaper. And you also need to file with them a signed adopted budget and supplementary pages. So, sort of a full set of budget pages along with the signed adoption page. Now, we do hope to be at a point for this fiscal year 26 budget submittal timeframe where you can submit these documents online via our system, so you can upload them and then the county auditor can go pull them down. We think we're really close for that, but we will let you know for certain if that's going to be available for the fiscal year 26 budgets. We'll communicate that. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me at any time. You'll see my numbers listed here and then also my email address, carrie.johnson@dom.iowa.gov. Thank you.